Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Razan Pereira. Well, 4 years ago, President Trump used his inaugural address to promise an end to what he called American carnage. On Wednesday, President-elect Joe Biden will appear at the same spot 2 weeks after the Capitol was stormed by a pro-Trump mob intent on stopping Congress from formally counting the electoral votes to confirm his victory. The bloodshed on Jan 6th means the handoff from the 45th to the 46th president has not been a peaceful transfer of power in the United States. A Washington Post ABC News poll published on Sunday found that Biden enters office with 49% of Americans confident that he will make the right decisions for the country's future, compared with 50% who take the opposite view. The 49% represents much greater trust than Trump's 38% mark 4 years ago, but much lower than the 61% who expressed trust in Barack Obama's decisions on the eve of his inauguration in 2009. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the opportunities and challenges for the Biden presidency. Joining me on the program today are Prabhu Dayal, former ambassador, Dhruv C. Katoch, Director, India Foundation, and KP Nair, strategic analyst. Thank you to my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Ambassador, I'd like to begin the program with you first. Let's look at what has happened over the last couple of weeks in the United States and also right throughout the run-up to the elections and what happened past that as well, and talk about some of the biggest challenges that President-elect Biden is likely to face early on in his presidency.
Well, first of all, President Biden has to restore the faith of the American people in the ability of the authorities there to cope with the challenges that have surfaced in recent days, particularly from groups which are extremist in nature and which are supportive of President Trump. So Biden's task is very clearly cut out to once again reunite America, because America is rather disunited at the moment. And I feel that amongst the challenges which he will have to grapple with would definitely be the challenge posed by Trump's supporters, assuring them that he doesn't mean to take any actions which would damage them or hurt them, but he would like to reintegrate them into American society. So in a nutshell, I think the task of healing America would be uppermost in his mind as he takes over the reins of authority.
Mr. Nair, let me bring you to the picture now. Is there a vast contrast really between what the American public expect from the President-elect Biden and what he can actually deliver, considering how divided America is presently?
Biden is fortunate in one sense that the expectations are low compared to, say, President Obama. When Barack Obama came to power, he came with so much expectations, and many of that he couldn't deliver. I mean, in the United States, nothing is easy because the country is polarized. It has been polarized for a very long time, at least 20 years since George H.W. Bush the first gave up the presidency. The country has been split down the middle. But Barack Obama offered hope. And compared to the kind of expectations that he generated, Biden is coming to office with low expectations. First of all, his age. People don't expect so much from a younger president who is seen as capable of more action, more delivery. Second, Biden is to borrow a phrase from our country, from author Sanjay Baru, Biden is an accidental president, I mean, the cast of candidates that were there in the primaries. The one who came nearest was Senator Sanders, and Sanders would have never been acceptable to the American people because of his left-leaning views. You see, so the Democrats chose someone who they thought could defeat Trump among the crop that was available. You see, so given that factor also, but the expectations from Biden are very low. But of course, his challenges are huge. I don't think any president since the Second World War has come to office with so much of challenges and so little ability to deliver. I'm not talking about the man as a person, you know. I mean, America's resources are depleted. The American economy is in a crisis. The pandemic is raging. It has devastated societies from counties to the national level. So America's ability to deliver, even if some president came with a magic wand, he would not have been able to deliver. So it's I wonder, it's not really a celebration what will happen in the US on the 20th normal inauguration. It is something that the country is going through as a routine because it has to be done. It's in many ways a very sad situation.
Okay. All right. So, General Katoch, does Biden have his task cut out? Do you believe that it's an uphill task going forward?
Yes, Frank, most certainly it's an uphill task. But as Mr. Nair said, when the expectations are low, anything delivered seems positive. So I think to that extent, he starts with a very strong advantage. Now, when we are looking at the division in American society, I think we are looking at what happened in Trump's tenure, where the Democrats went on that Antifa movement. And the amount of devastation and destruction they caused actually started the split, already widened the split. And what happened towards the fag end of Trump's tenure, where they stormed the Senate, I think that split it even further. But there is something very great about the American people. They are a very resilient society. In a sense, they are like Indians. We bounce back. They will bounce back. And when push comes to shove, you will find all Americans coming together to look at especially the external challenges. And the challenge which I'm seeing now externally, which is going to come, is the ability of America to remain number one in the world. Now, can they do it? Now, with a China which is barking on the heels. So that is something which I feel which will unite American people and get them back to what was their original role as leaders of the world. Or at least they would like to maintain it for as long as they can. Frank.
All right, so let's now dwell upon, what does the Biden presidency really mean for India? Ambassador, if I can start with you first, so what is it that India needs to look out for? What is it that we need to be wary of? How do you see the relationship between India and the United States going forward?
Well, at the outset, I would like to say that for quite some time, there had been concerns voiced in various sections that the Biden administration will be unfavorable to India. It had been argued that the close relationship between Trump and Prime Minister Modi and their very special bonding had perhaps negatively impacted Biden's perception of Prime Minister Modi, and that this would have an adverse effect on Indo-US relations. But I feel that recent developments have dissipated all such fears. In particular, I think the Modi-Biden telephone conversation, which took place on November 17, I think, firmly endorsed the view that the new US administration will work towards strengthening not just a political and economic relationship with India, but also the strategic partnership. Now, let me recall that after this phone conversation, the transition team of President-elect Biden had issued a statement in which it spelled out some of the shared global challenges on which India and the US would have to work together. These were firstly, containing COVID and defending against future health crises. Secondly, tackling the threat of climate change. Thirdly, launching the global economic recovery. Fourth, strengthening democracy at home and abroad. And fifth, maintaining a secure and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. Now, China was not specifically named, but one has to read between the lines because the threat to the Indo-Pacific region emanates from which country, if not from China? Now, as far as we are concerned, we have been severely impacted by Chinese territorial expansionism. The threat from China has been looming large at the LAC, and it's not going to disappear in the near future. And of course, we have positioned adequate troops at the LAC, but we need state-of-the-art weaponry. Now, in this regard, I think that the 4 defense agreements which we signed with the US have paved the way for further defense cooperation, and I think that such cooperation will be stepped up during the Biden administration for a variety of reasons. First of all, we need these purchases. On the other hand, the Americans also need to strengthen us because of the fact that Biden visualizes India as a country which will stand up to China.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, all the problems that were created in the Trump era are not going to go away. For instance, problems relating to trade will be difficult to overcome. The restrictions on H-1B visas may take some time to go. But by and large, I think the way is being paved for irritants to be cleared and for a smooth relationship to be worked out.
Absolutely. All right, let me take a couple of points forward with you, Mr. Nair. One, of course, on trade and the economy. Can we expect further cooperation? We saw a trade deal was elusive as far as the Trump administration was concerned, but in the Biden years, can we expect something on the trade and economy front? And also, what about H-1B, and do we expect him to take a softer stand as far as immigration policies are concerned?
You see, on trade, the fundamental differences that exist between India and the United States, which need to be negotiated, they are there. They don't change with any presidency because the problems are there which have to be negotiated. They were there during the Obama administration. The then USTR Mike Froman could not make progress because at that time the positions of India and the US were irreconcilable. During the Trump administration, quite frankly, the Trump administration's position was tougher. And Robert Litziger, the US Trade Representative, echoed what Trump wanted and tried with even America's neighbors who are allies, like Canada, for instance. He took a tough line, Trump took a tough line on NAFTA and renegotiated with Canada and Mexico. So, in a way, I think India's decision not to push too hard for a trade deal was wise. Because, for example, there was talk of at least a mini trade deal when Trump came here last February. If we had, in my opinion, if we had negotiated a mini Trump deal, Trump is mercurial. You never know what he is going to say tomorrow. After such a fantastic visit in February to Gujarat and Delhi, if he looked at the trade deal on the way back on Air Force One, he may well have arrived in Washington and lambasted, this trade deal and blamed his trade officials for having negotiated something which was probably disadvantageous in eyes to the United States. So, in a way, it was pragmatic and practical not to have pushed too hard for a trade deal. Now, I think with Biden, we have the possibility of hard-nosed, down-to-earth negotiations. But don't expect the Americans to give in easily on trade issues. We will have to do hard bargaining. And I think we have enough people in our setup who can guide the negotiations. For example, Hardeep Singh Puri, our Minister of State for Commerce, he has presided over 9 dispute settlement mechanisms in the World Trade Organization in his career, So we are under no circumstances better placed to negotiate on trade.
Right.
And so I think we will have good negotiations. We will we will make progress hopefully. But America is in a much more difficult position because of the economic downturn, the global economic downturn, to be able to make concessions. So
Sure.
we have to be aware of that, but I think we can hope for progress with the Biden administration.
Right. And General, as far as defense deals are concerned, the ambassador spoke about how we can see more defense cooperation. Do you see that happening over the next 4 years? And also, what's likely to happen in the Indo-Pacific?
Or absolutely. I think just taking off from what the ambassador had stated, our strategic interests between the United States and India, they converge. So regardless of the fact which administration is in power in the United States, Indo-US relations will continue to strengthen. I think the concern was not that the Biden administration will come in and it will impact on our relations. The concern, in my view, was slightly different. It was how will the Biden administration deal with Islamic terrorism and with China. And these were the 2 primary concerns of India. And so long as the Trump administration was taking a strong stand, it suited our strategic interests. And if Washington now is going to take a softer stand, it will impact upon us. Now, in my view, as far as the United States is concerned, on foreign policy issues, it would like to maintain its #1 status. And for that, the challenger is China. So China obviously will have to be contained. And India is a major player. And this is what has actually come out in the recent US paper on how they perceive India's role to be. So Indo-Pacific obviously is a very vital cog. Now, what are we looking at? We are looking at one of the fundamental disputes is between China and Taiwan, where at some point of time, President Xi Jinping thought that he would give enough time to Taiwan to reconcile to the idea of joining China voluntarily, or at least accepting the one China policy. And Taiwan is not going to accept it, which simply indicates that at some point of time, there will be a conflict. It is not a question of will there be a conflict. It is when will the conflict occur. And I think that is something which the US will have to prepare for, because their #1 position in the world will depend on how they deal with the Taiwan crisis as and when it takes place. If they don't intercede and China can walk over Taiwan, I think that will be the end of the so-called American supremacy. The second aspect, as far as India is concerned on this defense, I'll just dwell on this quickly, then I'll get to the defense part, is what is going to happen on our own LAC, with China. It is my view that so long as we are in a position, or at least China believes that if there is a conflict they cannot win, they will never go to war. They will be very, very concerned about going to a conflict which they cannot win, because not winning to them will mean that they have lost. Most likely, in my view, they will actually lose. So our response to China has to be an appropriate military response on the Tibetan Plateau to ensure a stalemate, if not an outright victory. And if we can ensure that, perceptually, there will be no war. As far as India-US defense cooperation is concerned, I think it is up to American interest to see that India gets the level of advanced technology which it needs to contain China, because that is the best bet for the United States to maintain its number one status. Frank.
Right. All right. Time to get closing comments now on the program. And since we are here, let's talk about the global perspective as well. And do you see challenges for the Biden presidency, Ambassador, or do you see opportunities? What is it that you see going forward?
Well, there will be challenges and there will be opportunities too. But I think that the Indo-US relationship is inextricably linked in the political and economic spheres, and both countries view each other as strategic partners. I also think that the level of engagement has reached unprecedented levels, with 5 US presidential visits taking place in the last 20 years, whereas in the 22 years before that, no US president had visited India. I think the strategic engagement is also evident from recent meetings like those of the Quad, the 2+2 strategic dialogue, which now takes place at the ministerial level. So I think that both countries will try and work out the modalities for increasing the opportunities and meeting the challenges. The challenges are not going to go away, but then we have to grapple with them. We have to work together, because otherwise things could just go wrong.
Mr. Nair, under Trump, we saw the United States walking away from several UN bodies and, global groupings. Can we expect the United States coming back into the fold, really, as far as some of these organizations are concerned, or do we see a continuation of the last 4 years?
Biden has expressed his desire to rejoin the international community, go back to some of the agreements and rejoin some of the organizations. But it will not be easy. It is easier said than done, because people forget that when Trump walked out of the climate change agreement, the actual exit, in effect, took place 1 year after he declared his intention to leave. You see, now if he wants to rejoin, there will similarly be several procedural undertakings that he will have to go through. He wants to rejoin the WHO. In principle, it may be okay, WHO will welcome it, several countries will welcome it, but supposing China objects in the General Assembly, supposing Russia objects, rejoining an international organization or joining an international organization, the procedures are the same for a small country like Botswana and a big powerful country like the United States. It can be blocked, through UN procedures. So it may not be easy. And, already there are portents. 2 days ago, Vladimir Putin announced that he is walking out of the Open Skies Agreement. Why now? The Americans walked out of the Open Skies Agreement quite a while ago. Putin continued in it, Putin is sending a message to Biden, in doing it now at this stage. Don't take us for granted, we mean business. And Putin had a very cozy relationship with Trump personally, although not with the US Congress. Similarly, the Iran nuclear deal, it will not be easy. I mean, Biden may want to rejoin, but for example, Iran will put conditions.
Right.
I mean, they're once bitten, twice shy. The supreme leader is not going to just allow the United States to come back and okay, everything is forgotten and forgiven. The Iran will extract a price definitely, but in closing, I want to mention one very positive thing as we approach the inauguration of the new president and vice president, which is that I think compared to the election time, the American public has come to terms with having Kamala Harris as the vice president. The New York Times magazine's cover story yesterday, it talks about her African American heritage and her South Asian descent. Initially, they only talked about her Jamaican origins and her Caribbean heritage and all that,
Right.
So I think it is a very positive sign that she is now seen as South Asian as well. And people I notice on television, the commentators and panelists in the United States have learned to pronounce her name correctly compared to the mistakes they used to go. For us, I think it's a very positive sign of her acceptance at large, and that I hope bodes well for the vice presidency.
All right. And General, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Right, Frank. On the geostrategic landscape, it is my view that President Biden will prepare his relationship with the European Union, and we are going to see a strengthening of that partnership. Especially if you're looking at the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and US cooperation with the European Union, it is going to be on an upswing. The real challenge, I think, for the Biden administration and strategic affairs, besides China, is going to be how they deal with West Asia, especially how they deal with Iran. I have already stated in your show earlier that it is my view that America and Iran are actually, they should be strategic allies. Their interests converge. And had it not been the Iranian nuclear bomb or their attempts to make a bomb, they would have been on a very strong wicket. So how President Biden really works around that relationship, either come through a regime change where the Ayatollahs are thrown out from Iran, or in some other manner. But I think that will remain his defining challenge. And if he can get over that, it will be a very positive step for American foreign policy.
All right. On that note, then, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to my panelists for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective. For us, what's coming out of this discussion is that there are challenges that galore, really, as far as Biden is concerned, and he has to certainly put the house in order. He has to work towards ensuring that he can bring all of America on the same page and bring them together. One thing that is working in his favor is that the expectations are far lower than what the expectations were when Barack Obama became the president in 2009. So as far as the policies are concerned, he has a bit of a free hand to go about doing what he needs to get done. As far as India and the United States are concerned, we are going to work and focus on 5 key areas, that is COVID-19 and ensuring that we deal with future health crises, global economic recovery, climate change, Indo-Pacific and defense cooperation is what the focus is going to be as far as India and the US are concerned. And as far as the world is concerned, Biden is going to try and re-engage with the international community and try to correct the mistakes of the past 4 years. It's going to be difficult, but let's wish him the very best before he takes over as the 46th President of the United States. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.